Hello, welcome to the pre-concert lecture. I'm Nashid Ari. I am the deposed board chair of the orchestra. So the orchestra is in better hands, and I have the distinct privilege to introduce today's pre-concert lecturer, Ingrid Stölzel. And she's a remarkable woman. Two things I like about her is one of them is she is truly has a unique sensor. When there is an emotional note in any music piece, she gets all kind of the hair, gets charged, and that might explain why she is really a favorite composer in a lot of circles. And Ingrid also told me that when she reads certain texts, the melody comes to her very easily, so that makes a lot of composers, therefore, are very jealous of her. And Ingrid was one of the, I believe, top 3 finalists in our previous composition competition in 2013, and she was on everybody's top list with a piece called Genius Loci, and I'm sure I'm messing up the pronunciation. Another reason I like Ingrid is we both have the same difficulty pronouncing the TH.
We do, and double use. I have to really practice that.
So, yesterday she was really great in answering all kind of silly questions with real grace. So we are very lucky today. Professor Ofer Bernamotz's class from Colorado College here, the front row. So it will be quite an interesting lecture. With that, go ahead.
So I was told I should speak up. So how is this level? Am I scaring you up here? Well, thank you so much for being here early. And I don't like the word lecture at all. I would love for it to be a sort of more conversation about this piece, Soul Journey, 3 written songs. And the piece itself had a bit of a journey, and I thought I would share that with you. It started with a commission of just one song for mezzo-soprano and piano by the Abiquiu Chamber Music Festival. Anybody know Abiquiu, New Mexico? Yeah, it's a tiny little town, but a lot of artists are drawn to this town, and famous probably because Georgia O'Keeffe had her Ghost Ranch there, and it's quite extraordinary. So this festival commissioned this one song, and for inspiration they did something really extraordinary. They invited me out the year before I started writing the song, and they threw me in the middle of a canyon in New Mexico at a ranch. It had electricity, but kind of just solar-powered electricity. It had a compost toilet, which, I'm not a big camper type of person, but it had some of those things. And what they wanted me to experience is the grandness, the amazing landscape that is in New Mexico around that area, Santa Fe, Abiquiu, that area. And of course, you know these beautiful landscapes because you're living in one of those areas. It's just gorgeous. So they put me in that canyon for inspiration, and I had no cell phone reception, I had no email or nothing, and it was truly amazing. So once I got used to, the more ruggedness of the ranch, I listened, the silence and the night at night, I'm sure you have that here in the mountains, but where I live in Kansas City, and you just don't see the sky, the millions of stars that are up there. But I did there in the canyon. It was really extraordinary. So then I had the task of finding words that would somehow help me write this song. And I wanted something that would speak to this experience I had in the canyon. So once I got back to Kansas City, I put a little SOS out to all my friends, and I said, I need poetry, know, and I want something that talks about nature and this connection we can feel with nature. And a friend of mine said, well, have you ever read Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass? And so I hadn't. I grew up in Germany. You know, we also read a lot of poetry, but Whitman, amazingly, was not on that list. We just had a whole bunch of German poets that we read. And so I was like, okay, Leaves of Grass, that already sounds good. Has nature in the title. There must be something really awesome about it. And so I downloaded the e-book, and I was surprised just how vast Leaves of Grass is. I mean, there's hundreds. And I see a lot of people nodding, like, you know this poetry. And because I was just looking for a poem, I just randomly, I didn't start from the beginning, I saw this poem called Grand is the Scene, and I thought, well, that sounds interesting, I wonder what that's about. And I clicked on it, and it just floored me, because what Whitman was expressing with, of course, words that I could never come up with myself, because I'm not a poet, I'm a composer, he captured exactly that amazement I had, being in that canyon and being disconnected from the rest of the world, and just feeling a kind of oneness that I think I can only experience when I'm not with my to-do list and my constant, I have to be doing something. Because there was nothing a lot, I mean, I went hiking, but there wasn't a lot to do in the canyon. And the texts are in here. And so if you just, it's page 17. It's just so, to me, such an amazing poem. Grand is the scene, the light to me. Grand are the sky and stars. Grand is the earth, and grand are lasting time and space. And grand their laws, so multiform, puzzling, evolutionary. So that was sort of the first part of that poem, everything that we see and we experience. And then Whitman goes on to say, but grand or far the unseen soul of me. And I think that is the part that, to me, started me on this journey, this soul journey. I felt like he captures something that I couldn't put into words myself, that if we have access to something within ourselves, all of the outside that we're experiencing becomes even more meaningful. And I think that's what I experienced when I was in that canyon. So I wrote this piece, and as Nashik was saying, I really do feel like the melody was already somehow in these words. And I just had to tease it out of the words. It came very, very quickly. And the premiere happened in Abiquiu, and one of the most amazing things, I think, as a composer that can happen, I'm pointing at Ufa because he's an incredible composer, love his music, and I think, at least for me, one of the most amazing things that can happen is you have a premiere of a piece, and it makes an impact, and then people say, you know what? You should write more. It's like the best, right? Like, will you write another piece? Or, and in this case, the Chamber Music Festival said, you need to create a cycle. This one song is great, but it needs to be a whole cycle, a song cycle, like 2 more pieces. So they commissioned 2 more pieces, 2 more songs to make this cycle of 3. And of course I knew I would stay with Leaves of Grass, and I went home and really dug into the poetry and read, I'm pretty sure, every, front to back, maybe multiple times, Leaves of Grass. And it started to become apparent to me that soul, this idea of soul for Whitman is something, there's a through line in Leaves of Grass. And it also became apparent to me that this is something that I wanted the song cycle not just to be 3 songs, but that there's some kind of progression within the song. So to me, the second song I picked, I swear, I think, this is the more upbeat middle song. To me, there's this kind of, where in the first song, you have this first recognition, maybe this first awareness that if you have access to something that's perhaps beyond just what we're experiencing on the outside, there is something that can be grander than ourselves. And then the second song, I mean the first sentence, I swear I think now that everything without exception has an eternal soul. So it's this kind of like, oh my gosh, the animals, he talks about the trees, the animals, everything is connected. And so there's this playfulness about this particular text. And this awareness that I felt like Whitman was sharing with us about if you're tapping into this, everything is connected. There's no separation. And then I found the last song, the last poem, it's on page 18. Thereest thou now, O soul, and there's a lot of TH in this particular poem, so I'm practicing. And this one to me was sort of the end of our journey. And if you look at just the first sentence there, walk out with me toward the unknown region, where neither ground is for the feet nor any path to follow. So this idea that all of us at some point will be just alone on this path at the end, but then the recognition that the soul has been with us this entire time, and perhaps what is first a very scary experience, and if, he talks about nor face with blooming flesh, nor lips, nor eyes are in that land. You know, it's he paints to me a picture of, you know, something that we're going into the unknown, and then the recognition, but we've had the soul with us this whole time, and there's something really to celebrate about it. So the piece actually ends in quite a big orchestral moment, a celebration, I think, of that journey that we're all on. So I had written this is where my own journey with this piece comes in. I had written this last song, this is the third one, right before I came here for the performance of Genius Loki, Spirit of Place. And I was staying with Libby and Nashit, and we have always really wonderful conversations. And I was talking about the song, and then as I was writing it, I kept, even though the commission was for mezzo and piano, I kept hearing these orchestral colors popping out. I was like, I wish I had a string section. I wish I had a flute, but I had to like keep it with piano. So I had made notes on my staff paper, like, oh, if I ever have a chance to orchestrate this, you know, this line would go to the flute, and oh, this is a clarinet moment, and here's an oboe note that would really be wonderful. So I mentioned this when I was here almost 3 years ago, and Nashik goes, oh, we have this wonderful mezzo-soprano in Colorado Springs, and goes to his computer, and she had just performed a Berlioz piece with the Chamber Orchestra of the Springs, and he plays me a recording of Jennifer singing the Berlioz, and I was like, wow, she's really, truly remarkable, and I would love to orchestrate this piece if we can, you know, figure out a way. All 3 songs for the Chamber Orchestra with Jennifer premiering. So, long story, but sort of full cycle, here we are. And last night was the premiere of that orchestral version, and it was really an amazing experience, and so grateful to the orchestra and Jennifer for putting in the work. It's not an easy piece in terms of putting together, and they've just done a really amazing job. So that's a little bit just the journey of how the creation happened, and maybe also give you an idea of why I picked these texts. And maybe as you're listening to it, you know, you can have the text with you. They are really, to me, masterpieces of master poems. I hope I did them justice. That's, I think, all we could ever hope for when we're setting great words to music. So I'm wondering, anybody have questions about anything I said? Yes.
Could this piece possibly be also sung by a male voice?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be, and if I think about the range real quick, I think it could be done by a tenor. So it's, or baritone. It's definitely possible. I haven't done, usually we do different editions, you know, you kind of make sure it works for all the voice types. But at this point, it's only been performed with the mezzo. But it's not a female necessarily perspective. I think it's a universal perspective. Good question. Thank you. Yes?
Could you please repeat the questions for the room?
Oh, yeah, I will. So this was the question, could this be performed by a tenor or a baritone as well? And I feel like, yeah, it's not from a female perspective necessarily. So, even though, you know, I'm a woman composer. Yes?
I don't know my Goethe very well, but would he agree with Mr. Whitman?
Goethe? Well, he's a different time period, of course.
Yeah.
But you mean it just in terms of the soul journey? Yeah, I think so. I've also recently said Emily Dickinson, which has a very similar approach as Whitman as well. And Goethe, I think, to me, you're thinking Faust, or what are you thinking?
Werther.
Oh, well, that's a little darker.
I know it's right.
Less hopeful, I would say. You know, Whitman to me, although he can also be very dark, the poems that I chose, I think, have a sort of affirmative, life affirmative feel to it, at least.
Which is a major, like Debbie Downer, right?
And, well, I don't know Debbie Downer, but everybody hearing the trombone right now. But to me, that particular matter, I mean, it caused a wave of suicides, for example. So it was certainly something that I would consider a downer. Yeah.
Along the lines of the primary answer, but maybe you too, did Whitman write this after his experiences as a medic during the Civil War?
Oh, that's a good question. All I know,
Because it is very, I think, positive.
Yeah.
These poems are, but
I would have to look that up. I don't know. I do want to say that these poems were not written in sequence. So meaning he didn't just write the first one, the second, third. I picked them really sort of out of the whole, so they were written in different times. But that's a great question. I'm not a Whitman scholar. There are very intelligent people that specialize in poetry, and it's my interpretation. If you read these poems and you're like, no, he really means something else, I'm open to learning about this, but this is how it struck me, and also just my own experience with life, I think I brought into it as well. Any other questions, eh?
Is there a specific moment you can think back from your time in New Mexico where you started really figuring out like, the direction that you wanted to go?
So it's a great question. Like, when did I figure out that this kind of direction I want to go with the poem? So I did not have Whitman yet when I was in the canyon, and so I knew I needed words that would express this kind of grandness that I was experiencing. Also a kind of oneness with nature that I have to say I had not quite had before. And there's a lot of composers that will write their own words. I feel like that is not my forte, so I needed somebody else to write the words for me. But I knew the kind of, it's also when you get a commission, we have a lot of young composers here, when you get a commission and the commissioning organization like puts you specifically in a place to inspire you, I felt like I wanted to write something that really speaks of the land, you know. So.
Were you in Chaco Canyon or were you up on the Ghost Ranch?
No, it wasn't the Ghost Ranch, because that's a sort of a little bit not far off the street.
Yeah.
This was a Calia Canyon. Yeah. Are you from New Mexico?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You can tell me if the first piece that really makes you think about New Mexico. Yeah, so it was actually quite difficult to get to this canyon. I had to drive like 3 miles in with my own car, and then they picked me up with this thing that could like go over rocks, you know, like one of those, like you get a little seasick in a car, because you're like this, you know. And apparently, when it rains, you only can get to this ranch by horseback. I was so grateful that it wasn't raining. So it was a great experience. And how thoughtful of the commissioning party to inspire me that way. I think as composers we often get like, write a 5-minute piece for this instrumentation, go. And this was different. I really appreciated having that kind of inspiration. Any other questions? Am I still not loud enough?
Well, you can't hear the questions. But one question is, did you learn musical instruments as a child?
Yes. Yes, so piano is my instrument. And I had a really awesome piano teacher because, I don't know, when you learn an instrument, you often, especially in piano, you have to memorize stuff. You have this experience like for recitals. And I was horrible at memorizing other people's music. And so what I would do is I would memorize the beginning and then I would forget and then I would make up my own stuff and I would just finish the Mozart sonata, you know, like in my own little version, which sounded a lot like Mozart, but wasn't what he wrote. And so I had a great piano teacher. He actually recognized that that is a skill. And instead of making me feel like I wasn't doing what I was assigned to do, and he said, I tell you what, you can make up your own endings for anything you want, but you have to write it down. And so he made me, you know, write down my thoughts, and so that's how I learned the craft. How do you get what's in here on paper so that you can give it to somebody else so that they can play it? And I often credit him, because if he had said, you know, no, I may have never really developed that initial, you know, capacity to put what's up in here, like improvisationally, onto the paper. So, yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah.
Has this experience of the last 3 years changed you spiritually as much as
I think I feel very grateful for the opportunities I've had, and also being able to choose texts like this and finding ways of getting that music out there. I would say my own personal journey has probably started a little bit before then. I'm an avid meditator and things like that. I do yoga and that kind of stuff. And I'm very interested, I think, also for my music to make a connection, an emotional connection with the audience. And I think that has changed for me a lot in the last, 10 years, where I was like fully going into the experience. And also, I write melodies. I love melody, and I think there are times in my life where I felt, because Ofa knows this because I'm from Germany, the Germans are still very modernist, avant-garde, and would you say?
Ask them.
Yeah. And I felt like, because I'm German, maybe I need to be more intellectual in my music, and And then I just let go of all that stuff, and now I just write and hope that when you hear this piece today, that I'm somehow making a connection with you. And I have an amazing singer that is emoting these words and these melodies, and so she's certainly helping me along the way on this one.
Is the Kansas School of Music a part of KU?
Yes! Yeah, Jayhawk, rock chalk. I'm a hardcore Jayhawk. And if you love basketball, that's the inventor of basketball, James Naismith, was from there, or taught there. So basketball is a big deal at KU. Oof. Are we rivals in any way? Let's see. Okay.
Did you have any communications or any discussions with today's conductor, today's vocalist, that helped them better understand or interpret what you intended? And if so, what were some of the points of those discussions?
Well, obviously I was in touch with the singer. I made sure she had, the score, and also I have recordings of the mezzo and piano version. I think that's always helpful. to a singer to be able to hear how the songs kind of unfold as a whole, because they can't practice with the orchestra like for months, right? We only have 3 rehearsals, and I was here a Friday night for the dress rehearsal, and we were able to make a few changes, just balance and also, you know, just interpretive things that, oh, you know, this was too fast, let's take it back a little. And it depends on the space. So this space is apparently a lot more live than the Broadmoor Church, so it will sound a little bit different in here. So, yeah. Yes?
Do you know Laura Horovnik?
Laura?
Horovnik.
No. Is she a...
She was a doctoral student.
At KU? In what?
Piano.
Piano. Unless she was like one of my graduates, then I would remember her.
She also was the working in the Heritage Sphere.
Okay. Okay.
Just wondering.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I think it might be about that time. Anyway.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.